Step back in time and rediscover the lost vegetables that once thrived in your grandparents' gardens. These hardy favorites nourished generations, but have nearly vanished. Let's bring them back together. Once known as the oyster plant, salsify had a mild, earthy flavor that mimicked seafood. It was a staple in Depression-era gardens and made frequent appearances in stews and fritters. This root vegetable traces its roots to Europe and was popularized in the U.S. during the 1800s. Its resilience in poor soil made it ideal for homesteads. Families relied on salsify not just for its taste, but also for its versatility. It could be fried, mashed, or roasted, making it invaluable during lean times. So why did it disappear? Its long growing season and difficult peeling process didn't mesh with modern convenience cooking or mass-market farming. Curious cooks and home gardeners should consider reviving this underdog. Heirloom seed companies are beginning to offer it again, and it thrives in cool climates. Encased in papery husks, ground cherries are sweet, tart, and often mistaken for miniature tomatoes. Your grandparents might have grown them near the corn rows or in tucked-away garden corners. Native to the Americas, they were cultivated by indigenous peoples and later adopted by settlers. By the early 1900s, ground cherry preserves were a homestead favorite. Their pineapple-like flavor and natural wrapping made them a snackable fruit that required little preservation. Kids would pluck them fresh and eat them on the spot. They faded with industrial agriculture, which favored crops that ripen uniformly and travel well. Qualities ground cherries lack. If you've never tasted a ground cherry, you're missing out. They're perfect for pies, jams, or straight off the vine. Lamb's quarters were once a beloved wild green, often foraged or grown alongside other leafy vegetables. Their spinach-like flavor made them a go-to in soups and sautés. This plant has been around for thousands of years, cultivated in North America long before European settlers arrived. It was a nutrient-rich staple across many cultures. Why did it matter? It grew fast, required no special care, and was rich in iron and calcium. Grandparents saw it as both a weed and a gift. With the rise of grocery store vegetables and the decline of home foraging, lamb's quarters were labeled as an invasive weed and largely forgotten. But with the return of foraging trends and heirloom gardening, this powerhouse green is making a quiet comeback. But before we dig deeper into greens, let's uncover a squash that's nearly vanished from seed catalogs. Cushaw squash, with its curvy neck and speckled green skin, was once a pie-making champion in southern kitchens. It's sweeter and softer than pumpkin, with a buttery texture that melts in your mouth. Introduced to the U.S. by Native Americans, Cushaw squash became a staple in Appalachian and Southern cuisine. It thrived in humid climates and resisted squash borers. Families baked it into pies, roasted it with spices, and even used it in savory dishes. Its seeds were saved year after year. Sadly, Cushaw was edged out by the uniform, mass-produced pumpkin varieties we see today. Its irregular shape didn't fit factory molds. Gardeners and chefs are starting to bring it back, especially as farm-to-table movements grow. If you want a squash that's uniquely Southern, this one's for you. Yes, the loofah sponge starts out as a vegetable. Your grandparents might have grown loofah for eating young or drying into natural scrubbers. Originating in Asia and Africa, loofah was introduced to American gardens in the 19th century. It thrived in warm southern climates and climbed fences with ease. Why did it matter? It had dual purpose: edible when young and tough enough to become bath or dish scrubbers when mature. That kind of resourcefulness was gold in simpler times. Loofah takes a long season to grow and doesn't tolerate frost, which made it less attractive as small farms gave way to supermarkets. But if you're into DIY or eco-living, consider adding it to your next summer garden. It's as satisfying to grow as it is to use. Did you ever grow any of these in your backyard? Let us know in the comments. Looking like a wild cousin of celery, cardoon was once a staple in Mediterranean-style gardens across America. Its thick stalks were blanched and braised for special holiday meals. A relative of the artichoke, cardoon originated in southern Europe and was brought to the U.S. by Italian and French immigrants. By the early 1900s, it flourished in immigrant kitchen gardens. It mattered because it offered a savory, slightly bitter flavor that added depth to rich winter dishes. Grandparents treasured it for its uniqueness and festive presence. So why the decline? Cardoon is high maintenance. It requires blanching, takes up space, and doesn't store well. Supermarkets passed it over for easier options. Today, chefs and home gardeners are rediscovering its gourmet flair. If you love heirloom veggies, This one deserves a second chance. Hamburg parsley looks like parsley on top, but hides a secret below. A tasty white root that was once a prized vegetable. Think of it as parsley meets parsnip. This dual-purpose plant dates back to 16th century Germany and became popular in American colonial gardens for its flavor and versatility. Why did it matter? Grandparents used the leaves like regular parsley and the root in soups and roasts. It was a true two-for-one crop in hard times. Modern supermarkets didn't know what to do with it. It wasn't leafy enough for the herb aisle or starchy enough for root veg bins. But if you want to reclaim forgotten flavors, Hamburg parsley deserves a comeback. It's cold hardy, flavorful, and easy to grow. These dazzling beans once wrapped around every garden trellis, their bright red flowers attracting hummingbirds and curious grandchildren. Originally from Central America, scarlet runner beans became popular in U.S. gardens in the 1800s for their beauty, hardiness, and protein-packed pods. They mattered because they offered both beauty and bounty. Grandparents harvested them young for tender green beans or dried the seeds for hearty soups. As green bean hybrids took over, these heirlooms were deemed ornamental and pushed out of the kitchen and into flower gardens. But they're back, thanks to permaculture lovers and heirloom seed collectors. Try them and you'll understand why your grandparents adored them. Before we move on, let's revisit a turnip cousin that once ruled root cellars across rural America. Part turnip, part cabbage, the rutabaga was once a winter warrior in American root cellars. Creamy, sweet, and filling, it was often mashed like potatoes. Bred in Scandinavia and adopted by settlers, rutabagas were widely grown by the late 1800s, especially in cold northern climates. They mattered because they stored beautifully and were full of calories. Grandparents counted on them to feed big families through long winters. So why did they disappear? Their earthy flavor fell out of favor with younger generations, and convenience foods replaced long roasted root vegetables. But roasted with garlic and herbs, rutabagas become a cozy, caramelized treat. It's time for a root revival. Have you ever tried rutabaga, or would you give it a chance now? Before they were weeds, dandelions were dinner. Grandparents foraged or grew these bitter greens every spring, often sautéing them with garlic or mixing them into salads. Dandelions have deep roots in European cuisine and were brought to America by settlers who valued their nutritional and medicinal benefits. They mattered because they were one of the first greens to appear after winter, offering essential vitamins when fresh food was scarce. As chemical lawn care and packaged foods rose, dandelions were rebranded as nuisances, sprayed instead of served. Now, chefs and herbalists are rediscovering their worth. Whether foraging or growing your own, these greens bring history and nourishment to your plate. Would you ever eat a dandelion green? Despite the name, Jerusalem artichokes, or sunchokes, have no connection to Jerusalem or artichokes. These knobby roots taste like nutty potatoes and were once backyard gold. Native to North America, sunchokes were a vital food for indigenous tribes and later adopted by colonists for their reliability and taste. Why did they matter? They were easy to grow, resistant to cold, and could be left in the ground for winter harvests. Unfortunately, their awkward appearance and gassy reputation earned them a bad rap in the modern food world. But with rising interest in prebiotics and gut health, sunchokes are regaining popularity. Roast them once, you'll be hooked. Next, a beet relative that once colored more than dinner plates. It dyed entire fabrics. Known for its enormous roots and vivid colors, mangelwurzel was grown for both livestock and human food. Grandparents boiled it, mashed it, and even fermented it. Hailing from Europe, it was a staple during the 1800s and helped families survive tough winters with its calorie-dense flesh. Why it mattered? It stored well, could feed animals and people, and was often grown as insurance against crop failure. Mangelwurzel fell out of favor as smaller, sweeter beets replaced it, and mechanized agriculture prioritized uniformity. But it's back in homesteading circles for its rugged charm and survivalist appeal. If you want to grow big, this one's for you. But we're just getting started. Up next is a cousin to okra with an ancient past and jelly-like seeds. Thick, glossy leaves and vining stems make Malabar spinach unlike anything else. Your grandparents might have grown it when summer greens were scarce. Native to Asia and Africa, Malabar spinach thrives in hot climates and was a favorite among southern growers who needed greens even in July. It mattered because it grew when other greens wilted, providing a juicy, spinach-like texture and a tangy taste rich in antioxidants. Modern grocery stores found its slimy texture and thick leaves hard to sell, leading to its quiet disappearance from everyday tables. Growers are rediscovering its beauty and resilience. It's a standout in vertical gardens and edible landscapes. But before we wrap up the greens, let's revisit a pungent veggie with a powerful punch and a loyal following. This fiery root was once a table staple, served alongside roasts and used to clear winter colds. Grandparents often kept a patch growing year-round. Originally from Europe, horseradish came to America with immigrants who valued its spicy, sinus-clearing flavor. Why did it matter? It packed flavor, preserved well, and even acted as a natural antibiotic. It was homemade medicine and mealtime firepower. As convenience foods grew and spicy flavors shrank, horseradish became a jarred condiment rather than a fresh staple. But nothing beats the fresh stuff. Try growing your own and grating it straight into sauces or mustard. It's unforgettable. We're only halfway through, ready to meet a forgotten pea that's sweet, plump, and almost extinct? Before supermarket hybrids took over, grandparents grew heirloom sugar snap peas that were plumper, sweeter, and more flavorful than anything you'll find today. Introduced in the late 1800s, these peas were grown on towering trellises, often picked straight from the vine by kids on the way to school. They mattered because they were among the first fresh vegetables of spring, signaling the start of growing season. Their crisp texture and sweetness made them a garden favorite. Modern varieties are bred for uniformity and shipping, sacrificing that homegrown flavor. And many people now skip growing peas altogether due to their short season. But heirloom snap peas are worth the effort. Try them once and you'll taste the difference, and the history. You've probably heard of collard greens, but your grandparents might have also eaten the roots. Collard roots were a southern delicacy, cooked down with vinegar and spices. This practice dates back to enslaved African traditions and southern survival gardening. Nothing went to waste, especially not nutrient-dense roots from mature plants. Why did they matter? Collard roots were hardy, flavorful, and symbolic of resilience. Many families passed down recipes that transformed tough roots into tender, soulful dishes. They faded due to modern farming techniques, which harvest greens before roots mature. Plus, root cooking traditions weren't passed down as frequently after urban migration. But root-to-stem cooking is making a comeback. Want a real southern throwback? Try simmering collard roots until they melt in your mouth. With a celery-like taste and towering stalks, lovage was once a common fixture in old homestead herb gardens. Every part of it, from leaves to seeds to roots, was used. Lovage has deep roots in medieval European cuisine and herbal medicine. Settlers brought it to America, where it flourished in cottage gardens. It mattered because it added intense flavor to broths, salads, and stuffings. Grandparents often used it instead of store-bought bouillon or celery seed. It faded with the rise of industrial seasonings and instant mixes. Its strong flavor and towering size also made it less appealing for modern patios. But for home cooks seeking bold, herbal taste, lovage is a lost treasure worth rediscovering. We're digging deeper still. Next up, a green so bitter, it was known as a test of toughness. Not all mustard greens are created equal. Your grandparents may have foraged wild mustard, sharper, spicier, and more nutrient-rich than the tame store versions. Wild mustard has grown across North America for centuries. Pioneers and homesteaders relied on it for winter vitamins and bold flavor. It mattered because it could be found nearly anywhere. Spicy and strong, it added fire to bland meals and helped clean the palate after heavy winter dishes. These greens faded as store-bought varieties were bred for mildness. Plus, fewer people forage today, losing touch with their wild cousins. Reconnecting with wild mustard is easy. It often grows in backyards and roadsides. One taste, and you'll understand its bite and beauty. Also called mangle beets, these enormous red or yellow roots were grown for livestock, but many families also cooked them up for supper. Introduced from Europe, giant forage beets could grow over 10 pounds. Grandparents valued them for their size, storage ability, and sweet flavor when cooked right. Why they mattered? They were a calorie-dense food in lean times. Often, one beet could feed a family, or multiple animals, through a cold stretch. They disappeared with the rise of modern feed options and smaller, supermarket-friendly beets. People forgot you could actually eat the big ones too. Today, they're making a quiet comeback in homestead gardens and survival plots. One slice, roasted or boiled, and you'll see why. Did you ever harvest a beet bigger than your head? Tell us in the comments. Celeriac may look like a knobby mess, but your grandparents knew better. Its mild, celery-like flavor made it perfect for winter slaws, soups, and mashes. This root vegetable hails from the Mediterranean and gained popularity in American gardens by the early 1900s. It was more cold-hardy than stalk celery. Why did it matter? It stored well, was easy to grow in cool climates, and offered subtle flavor when fresh produce was scarce. Celeriac lost favor due to its odd appearance and long growing season. Shiny, uniform carrots and potatoes were simply easier to market. Now, chefs are embracing its rustic charm and earthy flavor. Add it to your next stew, and you'll be part of a delicious revival. The next veggie might sound like a spice, but it once ruled spring gardens across the Midwest. Coriander root isn't just a side product. It was once the main reason to grow cilantro. Grandparents used it in broths, pickles, and curries. Used widely in Southeast Asian cuisine, coriander roots made their way into early American gardens through immigrant cooking traditions. They mattered because they delivered concentrated, citrusy flavor. Cooks would crush them into meat rubs or use them to brighten up stews and stocks. Cilantro became popular for its leaves, and over time, roots were discarded. Commercial herb packaging rarely includes them, but home gardeners know, plant your own and harvest the whole thing. You'll unlock layers of flavor your grandparents never forgot. Also called field peas or crowder peas. Cowpeas were once a southern staple and a key crop in backyard victory gardens. Native to Africa, they were brought to America by enslaved people and became vital to southern cuisine, especially in dishes like Hoppin' John. They mattered for more than flavor. They fixed nitrogen in the soil, thrived in hot climates, and stored well when dried. Cowpeas fed both people and livestock year-round, making them a dependable crop for generations. They declined as grocery stores favored green peas and canned beans, while traditional legume dishes lost popularity. Now, heirloom varieties like Red Ripper and Whippoorwill are making a comeback in homestead gardens. Have you ever tasted fresh cowpeas? Small, white, and shockingly sweet, Hakare turnips were once treasured in early spring harvests. Grandparents would eat them raw like apples. Originally developed in Japan, they became popular in American gardens post-World War and were especially common in Asian American communities. Why did they matter? Their mild, juicy flesh made them a kid-friendly introduction to root vegetables. Even picky eaters enjoyed their crunch. Hakare turnips faded as spicy purple-top varieties took over. Plus, most people forgot turnips could actually taste sweet. These days, they're back at farmers markets, usually sliced into salads or roasted with herbs. One bite, and you'll understand the hype. Let's end with even more rare treasures. Just wait until you hear about the potato that wasn't a potato. At first glance, oca looks like a tiny jewel-toned potato, but bite into one and you'll taste something tart, tangy, and completely unexpected. Oca hails from the Andes and was grown by native South Americans for thousands of years. It made its way into American gardens in the early 20th century. Why it mattered? In colder regions where potatoes struggled, oca thrived. It was drought-tolerant, bug-resistant, and full of flavor, making it a survival food with flair. So why did it vanish? Oca isn't well suited to large-scale farming and takes time to develop its signature taste after harvest, requiring patience modern agriculture lacked. But if you love trying new things, OCA's still out there. Specialty seed companies now offer heirloom varieties in brilliant colors. Known as wild leeks, ramps were once foraged every spring in the Appalachian Mountain and celebrated with festivals, pickles, and sizzling skillets. Ramps are native to North America and have been cherished by native tribes and early settlers for their garlicky bite and immune-boosting properties. They mattered because they were one of the first green edibles after winter, bursting with flavor and nutrients. Grandparents used them in eggs, soups, and cornbread. They faded due to overharvesting and their short growing window. Plus, their intense aromas scared off casual cooks in the modern kitchen. Today, ramps are a foodie obsession, but foraging them responsibly is key. So learn the old ways and bring back the springtime tradition. And speaking of strong flavors, let's talk about a peppery plant your grandparents used to keep colds at bay. This peppery green once grew wild in creeks and spring-fed ditches, often harvested by hand and tossed into sandwiches and salads. Watercress has ancient roots in Europe and Asia, and was brought to America by settlers who quickly discovered its abundance in clean running water. It mattered for its taste and nutrition. Grandparents prized its spicy crunch and considered it a natural multivitamin during early spring months. Watercress faded as waterways became polluted and mass agriculture took over leafy greens. It's now mostly hydroponically grown or forgotten entirely. Want to bring it back? Look for clean local springs, or grow it yourself indoors with circulating water. It's a delicious piece of edible history. Up next, a bean so buttery it was once considered a delicacy for Sunday supper. Butter beans, especially the big white heirloom types, were once a southern Sunday staple, slow-cooked with ham bones, onions, and love. Originally from South America, these beans were brought north through trade routes and flourished in southern soil. Grandparents knew which ones to grow for the creamiest results. They mattered for their comfort factor. Buttery, filling, and cheap, they offered nourishment and flavor in hard times and good times alike. Modern varieties are smaller and often canned. Many heirloom types vanished as seed saving declined, and mass agriculture shifted toward uniformity. Luckily, growers are reviving old-school types like Big Mama and Willow Leaf. Cooked right, they melt in your mouth and taste like tradition. With a regal name and earthy flavor, Good King Henry was once a go-to green in early American gardens. Grown like spinach, but even more nutritious and pest-resistant. This hardy perennial came from Europe and was widely grown in colonial America long before annual spinach became the standard. Why did it matter? It came back every spring, needed little water, and fed families for months with minimal care. Grandparents relied on its consistency and strength. It disappeared as commercial spinach and packaged greens took over. Its slightly bitter taste and slow growth didn't suit modern farming. But for those who enjoy perennial gardening and heirloom vegetables, this poor man's asparagus is ripe for rediscovery. Sea kale was once a delicacy in Victorian gardens and early American coastal communities. Its thick, cabbage-like leaves blanched for tenderness. Native to European coastlines, it was brought to America by settlers who admired its salty, nutty flavor and decorative appearance. It mattered because it thrived in sandy soil and sea air, perfect for beach towns. Grandparents often boiled it, buttered it, and served it as a side dish. It disappeared as shipping vegetables inland became easier, and salty coastal crops were considered too niche for mass production. But this perennial veggie is making waves again in permaculture circles and coastal gardens. Try it for a true seafarer's taste. Did your grandparents ever grow anything by the sea? Let us know in the comments. These eye-catching beans could grow up to 3 feet long and were common in immigrant gardens across the U.S., especially in the South and California. Brought over by Chinese immigrants in the 1800s, yard-long beans became popular for their productivity and heat tolerance. Why they mattered? They were incredibly efficient, yielding long pods that could be stir-fried, steamed, or dried. Grandparents often trained them on arched trellises. They fell out of favor as green beans took center stage in American cuisine, and their unique length made them hard to package. Now, home gardeners are falling in love again. Their flavor is sweet, their vines are prolific, and they're as fun to grow as they are to eat. The next one was pickled, fermented, or fried, and not a single part was wasted. Looking like a vegetable from outer space, kohlrabi was once surprisingly common in backyard gardens, especially among German and Eastern European families. Originally from Europe, kohlrabi became popular in America in the 19th century for its adaptability and unusual texture. It mattered because both the bulb and leaves could be used, reducing waste. Grandparents sliced it into slaws, stews, or even fermented it. Kohlrabi declined as other brassicas, like broccoli and cabbage, took center stage in supermarkets. Its odd shape and name didn't help, but now it's a favorite at farmers' markets. Crunchy, peppery, and refreshing. It's ready for its second act. And now, a bonus. A wild plant turned soup star that grandmothers once swore cured colds. Before chicken soup, there was nettle soup. Stinging nettles were foraged by grandmothers and boiled into rich, immune-boosting broths. Native to North America and Europe, nettles were used by native tribes and settlers alike for food, fiber, and medicine. Why they mattered? Nettles were free, packed with iron and vitamins, and one of the first edible greens to appear in spring. They faded as store-bought remedies and packaged greens took over. Plus, the stinging part turned many away, but once cooked, They're harmless and incredibly nutritious. Many foragers and herbalists are bringing nettles back into fashion. Let's finish strong with two more veggies that brought beauty and survival to generations past. Often called a weed today, purslane was once a nutritious summer green sautéed, pickled, or added to salads. Originating in the Middle East, purslane made its way to American gardens through trade and migration. Grandparents often found it growing wild and took advantage of its omega-3 rich leaves. It mattered because it was heat-tolerant, abundant, and incredibly nutritious. A handful of purslane could turn a bland salad into a summer feast. It vanished from tables as lawn culture demonized it, and few realized its health value. Grocery stores still label it a nuisance, but it's gaining traction again, both as a microgreen and in wild gardens. Try it once, and you might rethink your entire weed list. Last but not least, the queen of heirloom vegetables, a leaf your grandparents knew by name. Tangy, lemony, and perfect for spring soups, sorrel was once a culinary herb every gardener kept close. Native to Europe and Asia, sorrel was cherished for centuries before spinach became dominant. Grandparents cooked it into creamy soups and sauces or added it fresh to dishes. Why did it matter? Sorrel's unique sour flavor added brightness to otherwise bland meals, especially after long winters of dried or canned goods. It faded as American taste shifted towards sweeter, milder greens, and convenience foods edged out garden herbs. Now, chefs are rediscovering it. Add sorrel to your next soup or salad, and connect with a flavor your grandparents loved. I hope you enjoyed this journey through forgotten vegetables your grandparents grew. Which one surprised you most? Share your memories and gardening plans in the comments. Until next time.